programming, I'm going to create a virtual function, but it is going to be, right, as you can see in here, pure. Any pure virtual function must be assigned to 0. And we always define the pure virtual function only inside the base, right? As an pure. As an pure means we are gonna assign it to 0. And we have to define it inside the header file. If you are practicing object-oriented, we have to define it inside the header file of the base class. And then do I need to redefine it or detail it inside the .cpp? No, that's the difference. Since this is pure, since this is being assigned already to 0, that simply means I do not need to define anything as .cpp file for those base classes. So that's what we call it, abstract base class. Abstract base class means I'm not going to, as you can see right in here, I'm not going to detail it, and it has or it contains a pure virtual function which is a member of that class being defined under the public. So stay with me, I'm gonna practice this one inside the code, but before that, I'm going to give you the structure of what do I mean when I say multiple inheritance. This is good to know, or look at the flowchart. As I use the example of parents and child, you can see right in here, I have two base classes. One of them is labeled as A, and the other one is labeled as B. But I'm having only one derived class. But both of them, both of A and B, supposed to be the source for the derived class. This is in terms of flowchart. In terms of defining it inside the code, there is a difference between defining multiple inheritance with one single inheritance. When I was teaching you to define one single inheritance, I asked you to, of course, include the colon in the very first line of the class definition, and then right after that, just use the term public and the name of that base class, and start defining your class. And that's how you define your inheritance. Right now, you have to use colon, but you have to use the name of, if you have two base class, both classes inside that first line of class definition, which we are going to practice it shortly. So if you have any question, let me know. Otherwise, we can start programming. Yes. Pardon? It has to be inside .h. We are defining always the class inside the header file. Class is something that I'm gonna start teaching you right in here too, but we always define our class inside the header file, which we call it a specification. Any implementation is going to be inside the .cpp file. So stay with me and I'm gonna explain it in more detail. Start creating your first class. So I've already have my source, which is holding the main. You can call the project whatever you prefer. I called my project source 88 because this is lecture 8. So that's why I use the 88. And since I'm having 8 already, so I call it 88. Therefore, start creating your class. Hit add, class. Pay attention. This is really beneficial. Somehow I'm going to review just everything with you. My first class, I'm going to call it a sphere. Right? This is my first class. Hit OK. And it will generate both header file and .cpp file for you. Since this is going to be a base class for me, I don't really need my .cpp. But still, if you want to get access to your .cpp, it's right in here under the source file. So you can either continue programming using hash pragma once, or you can simply get rid of hash pragma once, which we already used it in previous lecture. So today, again, I'm going to go back to, so every other lecture, I switch the method to make sure you guys know either is correct. Either you can use hash pragma once alone and then continue class definition, or you can just say hash if and def, and then if you click this one, it will give you a template, right? So then remove any extra, and definitely your class must be inside, must be right in here. Follow me and create this one properly. So you can see everything is not clear right now because you have to give it a name. My class name is a sphere, so I would say sphere underscore h. And then right after that, I have to include, right after that, define. Then you have to define what is this sphere. So say hash define sphere underscore h. And then right after that, you can see everything is right now colored and prepared for you to start working. So this is going to be my first class. Therefore, I'm gonna just in here mention using my space to make it easier for me. And then I can start defining everything as my class members, right? So class member, I'm gonna define protected, and I'm gonna define public. So protected and public. So I create my template first, and then I'm gonna start defining. Since this is a sphere, the variable which I'm gonna define under protected for a sphere is gonna be radius. I may have some decimal point, therefore I'm gonna use double. And then I give it the name radius, as simple as possible, right? So I'm ready to move to my public. As always, I'm gonna start with defining my default constructor. My class name is a sphere. So my default constructor is going to be a sphere. I've already said what I have as my variable under a sphere. Since I'm having radius, so I have to say what is radius? Open your curly bracket and set it to default 0. That's it. Right after that, start defining your non-default constructor, right? So non-default constructor means, again, you have to look at the variable that you have for a sphere. For me, I'm using double, so I have to use double. And if you are defining your non-default right in here under header file, you have to make sure to include the new variable, and then go ahead, open your curly bracket and say what is this new variable. So for example, I'm gonna say radius assigned to r. Of course, you may ask me, can I have this line to be done after double and then get like the extra information under the .cpp? Yes, that's also true, right? But since this is a base and I don't want to make it complicated, I finish this one all right in here. Right after that, I'm gonna define some getter and setter. So I'm gonna say for my getter, I have to look at my variable is double, therefore I'm gonna say double. And then what do I want to get? I'm gonna get radius. And remember, this is getter, so it has to be constant. And of course, again, you can return it right in here, which I'm gonna do so. I'm gonna return radius, or you can return inside .cpp. This is my getter for radius. Since I have only one variable, therefore I need only one getter, right? So next I'm gonna set this one to something. Again, setter means I'm gonna say void set. Again, set is a keyword. Set radius, and then you have to use the variable. Variable was double. This is double. And remember, I set it to R, right? Because I'm assigning it to R. Say double R. This is important. And then return it. Make sure the second one is not parentheses right in here. You have to use curly bracket. Otherwise, you are going to get error. So return again. But this one, this is setter. Sorry, it's not return because it's set. So you have to say what is radius. I'm setting it. I'm setting it to R. Therefore, you have to again say radius is assigned to R. So radius is assigned to R. I'm good. So far, I see no error, nothing. So I'm good to continue. And this is the good part. Remember, I said I'm going to teach you virtual, but pure virtual. Look at the structure. How do I define my pure virtual and understand the difference between pure virtual and regular virtual? Again, for pure virtual, similar to regular virtual, I have to use virtual as the keyword, and definitely I have to use data type, which for me I'm gonna use double, and you have to give it a name. I'm gonna consider volume for the name, and of course this is going to be const, but the difference is right in here. Before we were not setting it to 0, but today, since this is going to be pure virtual, I'm gonna set it to 0. So I leave you some comment in here. This is pure virtual function. Do I need to detail it inside the .cpp? No, because this is already 0. And I'm okay in order to use this one in the other classes. But the thing is, what is the benefit? The benefit of having a pure virtual function, simply I do not need to redefine it in my next base classes. Right? It can be considered for all of them. And this is what we call it in here, abstract data. I'm having some abstract data. So kids, just answer my question. Is this a base class or this is a child class? Or I would say the derived class. How do you know this is a base class? Line 6. I'm always looking at the definition of the class, right? I always look at the definition of the class and I see, okay, there is no other class connected to this one. Therefore, this is my base class. So I'm good. At this stage, I do not need any other information, and I'm going to create my next class. Again, hit add, choose class, give it a name. I'm going to create another one. I'm going to call it cylinder. Hit OK. And right after that, again, either you can continue with pragma once, or you can have hash if and if. It will create some structure for you and then move your class definition inside. This is important to have if and if at the end. If you don't have and if at the end, it'll give you error. Then give it a name. For example, this is a sphere. This is cylinder. I'm going to say cylinder underscore h. And then I have to say hash define again cylinder underscore h. And you can see now everybody is everything is adjusted. All of them are colored and ready to program. So I have to start defining my class member. Again, I'm going to use protected and I'm going to use public. First, I create my template, then I'll start detailing it. So this time I'm having cylinder. Cylinder has some length in addition to radius. Therefore, I'm going to say double, and I'm going to define radius and length, both of them, as my protected class member. Then I'm going to start again defining my cylinder as an default constructor. And this time, remember, you have two variables. You have radius, assign it to length, and assign both of them to 0. This is your default constructor. Then create your non-default. Create your non-default, but for the non-default, if you plan to detail it right in here, say double, maybe R for radius, and again double, L for length, and then define what are those. For defining, say radius is assigned to R, right? Semicolon. Pay attention, this is not comma. It must be semicolon, right? And then you have also length. Then say length assigned to L, again semicolon. This is super important, right? So I'm done with my constructor. It's time to go define your mutator and accessor, or setter and getter. Either will work. So I'm going to say void. I'll start with my setter. So I'm going to say void set I have two variables. One of them is radius. Do not confuse the radius under cylinder with the radius under a sphere. For both of them, I'm having radius, right? So, but they are two different radius. And then I'm going to say double. Remember, I already said radius to r, so I would say r. And then this is my setter. For setter, I have to say what is radius again. I have to say radius is r semicolon. I repeat this one for length. Wide set length. And then I again say double. And I already said L, therefore I use the same. And then I'm going to say what is length. Length is assigned to L semicolon. So far so good. Everyone is following. Pay attention every now and then. Check your green check mark. Make sure you are not carrying an error and just taking it from one class to another class and then making it complicated to troubleshoot. If any error, fix it right now. It's time to go define my getter. In order to define getter, I have to always use the same variable. Since I'm starting with double at the beginning in here, therefore I'm gonna use double. Get is the keyword, radius is my variable, so I say get radius. And then for getter, all you have to do is keep it constant. And of course, return is mandatory. If you don't return, you're gonna get error. Return what? Return your radius. You don't say return R. You have to return radius. Right? Even maybe it's even better if you define this one before. You can even do so. It doesn't matter, right? You can first say get radius and return radius, then set radius to R. It doesn't matter if you are having it before or after. That's why I remind you. You can do the same for length. You say double get length, right? Get length, keep it constant, and then return length. And then return length. You got it? So you get radius, return radius, and then you set radius to R. You get length, you return length, and then you set length to L. Makes sense what I did? Therefore, I'm going to finish this up right in here. Make sure, since I'm using if and if, you have to make sure you have, for the class definition, semicolon at the end is mandatory. And if is mandatory, otherwise you are going to get error. So I'll minimize for everyone to see everything for the cylinder class. So now I'm asking a question. Is this a base class or it's a derived class? Who can answer this question? Base. How do you know this is a base class? Which line? Line 4 is 100% correct. I look at line 4. I see line 4 is just the name of this actual class, not connected to any other class. Means there is no inheritance, right? And of course, I don't have aggregation in here too. So there is no inheritance means it's not receiving information from any other classes. Therefore, by itself, this is a base class. So for how many base classes do I have? I have cylinder and I have a sphere. And one more time, class definition or a specification is always done under the .h, right? So now I'm ready to create my third class. Again, click on source, hit add, choose the class, give the name. This time I'm going to create another class, call it Composite. Hit OK. Now I have my third class as well. What do I want to do in here? Under the Composite class, again, you can keep hash pragma once, or you can go ahead and say hash if and if. And then again, move your class right in here. And then edit the name of the class. So this is Composite. Then I'm going to say Composite underscore H. And then I'm going to say hash define Composite underscore H. And then I'm ready to define this new class, right? So what I'm gonna do right in here, this is my composite class. Again, I'm gonna go ahead right in here to make it easy for me, define using namespace std to make it much easier. And then it's time to define class members. But before that, I'm planning to define this one as multiple inheritance, right? Since I'm defining this as multiple inheritance, I must include the other header files. Like for example, in here, I have to say hash include how many other base classes I have. I have cylinder. Pay attention, I'm using double quotation. Why is that? Who can answer this question? Why I'm using double quotation in here? Simply because I am including a local header file. Anytime you include a local header file, you can enclose it inside double quotation. And I'm having another one, hash include sphere, right? But again, pay attention. Any local header file must be included with .h. If you don't include .h, you are going to get error. And of course, for this one, I'm going to even use iOS stream. So I would say hash include. But now, again, pay attention. I'm using just bracket. Therefore, iOS stream is just a header file, but not local, right? And since I'm going to use the data type, a string, then I'm going to say hash include a string as well, right? So now I'm ready. I'm going to minimize. Everyone can see what are my detailed information. A little bit more clarification. Yes. Which one? Cylinder header file? Yeah. This is my cylinder header file. So you have protected and public, and you have two variables in here. You got it? Yeah. So I'm ready to start defining my class. But remember, I said my purpose in here is practicing multiple inheritance. Pay attention, this is new. How do I define my multiple inheritance? I have to look at my line 12, which is the class definition, and I have to add colon, only one. Pay attention, not double, not colon, okay? And then I'm going to say public, and then the name of the classes, which I've already included in here, cylinder and a sphere, right? There is no order. For example, I'm going to start with a sphere. And then this is again important. Colon is not going to be in between them, or semicolon. It's going to be comma. Comma, again public, and then the name of the other class, which is cylinder, right? Everyone got it? You don't have to include .h anymore, just the name of the classes. Now, everybody, only having this single line, which is highlighted, you can understand this is practicing multiple inheritance, because I am communicating or just getting information from more than one class, sphere and cylinder. Make sense, everyone? Good. So now it's time to start defining my class variable as private and public. These are my class variables, which I'm going to start defining. For private, since this is going to be composite, and composite is a material, I'm going to say I'm having a string material. This is going my only variable under this class. And then I'm going to start my public. As always, I always start with my default. I'm going to maximize to make sure everyone can see clearly. I start with composite. This is my default. And I'm going to say, what is it? As a default, material is assigned to 0. That's it. And then I'm going to say composite. And I'm going to define my non-default. So since this is the good part of it. Pay attention. My variable or my data type for the variables under the composite class is a string. But remember, I'm going to move up right in here. You can see I have two other classes included in here. Therefore, I have to include all of the members of sphere class and cylinder class as well. I review with you. Under cylinder, I have two double. Under a sphere, I have one double. All together, I have to add three doubles right in here in addition to the string. Therefore, I'm going to say a string for the material, and then I'm going to say double for radius of the cylinder, another double for the length of the cylinder, another double for the radius of a sphere. So all together, I'm having like 4. Now it's time to just give them the variable in case you want to define everything right in here. In case you want to move it to .cpp, it's okay. You can finish this up like this and then define it with detail inside the .cpp. So, but in here, I'm going to say, I'm going to give it detail. Therefore, since I'm going to give it detail, I'm going to say M for material, and then I'm going to give it, let's say for the rest of, in case, I show you both methods. Give it detail or variable for material. Give it another one for the radius and length if you wanted to continue in here. For example, say CR for the radius and then CL for the length and another CR for the radius under the SR under the sphere. But I'm not gonna do that since I did it for the previous one. I'm gonna practice defining this just like that and then go detail it inside the .cpp. So this is the purpose for now. So then right after that, I'm gonna say, kids, something important. Composite is material, right? I cannot give it, this is a string. I cannot give it number, right? What should I give it? Yeah. Just quotation. But since it is going to be default, should I include anything inside the quotation or I should just leave it empty? Just empty. So, right in here, just give it empty quotation. Of course, this is going to be the default. You can include something, but you won't be able to for example, adjust it later, right? So you can just give it empty quotation to become default constructor. But if I give it some number, it won't work because this is a string. Make sense? Now I leave this for the next step to go detail it inside the .cpp after I'm done in here. That's why it is underlined green. So now I'm going to add, this is the good part. Now I'm going to look at my virtual function. Remember, I defined a pure virtual function. Pay attention when I define my virtual function in here. I do not need to turn it to virtual anymore. Still I say virtual. Still I say double. And still I use the exact same function named volume. But I just finish it right in here. And then it becomes underlined green. Simply means you have to detail it inside .cpp, right? So this is going to be all I need under the composite for the functions. And now I'm going to practice my input output. We already had lots of this, but one more time. For input output, I can use friend and then iStream and operator. And of course, right after that, if this is iStream, then you have to have your shift toward left direction and then define iStream and operator, comma, composite and operator. Composite and operator. And then right outside, say semicolon. You can repeat the same thing friend, O stream, and operator. But this shift is right now, this is O stream output toward the other direction. And then again say O stream. Pay attention, don't go wrong and mix and match. If it is I stream, all of them is I stream. If it is O stream, all of them are O stream. And operator here, and then semicolon. And both of them should be underlined green. And then it's time, I'm going to show you everything under this. Let me minimize as much as possible to show you everything together, right? So this is all I need under my composite header file. Everyone following? Any questions so far? So I'm done with all three classes with header file. I'm going to pause right in here. I'm going to give you a break, and then we will come back and continue. One more time, pay attention. You have to make sure that everything in here is defined properly. And now it's time to go focus on defining any line which has underlined green inside the .cpp. So before everything, I'm gonna just review. Under the composite, I have default constructor, non-default constructor. Non-default constructor is composite. As I said, either you can give it like variables right in here, different variable, whatever. I'm not going to repeat that step. I said it before. If you added variable, remove all of them, keep it exactly the way I have right in here, no variable. If it is no variable in here, then we are ready to go. Click on composite.cpp and start detailing all of them right in here, which I'm gonna practice this one. So remember, anytime you have a non-default constructor and you are gonna detail it in here, you have to use the name of the class and then colon, and then again the name of the class, and then start, for example, in here, remember how many variable I have, one string and a three double. Altogether, I'm having four of them. So I start with a string. For material, I'm gonna use M, and then double. I have two radius, one of them under cylinder and the other one under sphere. Therefore, for the cylinder one, I'm gonna say CR, standing for the radius of the cylinder, and then again double. I had cylinder length, and then I have double, and I had sphere radius, so I say SR. Now it's the important part right in here. Pay attention. I am having some inheritance in here, right? Remember, I'm practicing multiple inheritance. Therefore, this is super important to address them. So I add a single colon, and I get the information of CR, CL, SR from my previous classes. I do not need to really redefine all of them. Therefore, all I have to do, I have to say, for example, for the cylinder, I have to use the class cylinder. Say cylinder, open parentheses. So I'm going to push this to the next line to be able to maximize. Then you can see exactly what I'm doing. And then inside here, CR and CL, CR and CL, actually, they are coming from my cylinder, right? They are coming from my cylinder, right? But the thing is, this one, I did not call it CL, maybe just L. CR, and because I have only one, you can also call CL if you have multiple. So CR and L, those are coming from my previous class. And this is again important. You have to use comma, use a sphere to get access to the sphere class. What is coming from there? SR. SR is coming from sphere class. And then open your curly bracket and then define the only one, which is material. Say material is right now set to M, and that's the only one from the composite class. And I'm done. If I go back, I should see that the composite underline green is already gone, and that's how you validate you did it properly. Make sense? Now, next line that I need to take care of is my virtual class volume. So I'll go back to my .cpp. I start defining my volume right now. So remember, the volume data type for it is double, so I should say double, and then I must use the composite as the class name colon. And then right after that, since this is function, I have to use only the function name, which is volume. And then, of course, since it was constant, I have to use const. And then I have to start defining what I want my volume to be. That's the important part, right? So now in here, this is volume. It has to just do some calculation for me. So either you can do the calculation under a variable and then return the variable, or you can simply say return and then define all of your calculation method right in here. For example, I'm going to say 4 divided by 3, and then this is going to be times pi. Pi is going to be a constant variable that I must define it. So I'm first using it, and then I'll go back inside the header file. I'll define it as well. Right now, you may see it. It is underlined red because it's not defined yet. And right after I'm done in here, I'll finish the definition. So now, remember in here, some of the information is supposed to come from the other classes. For example, a sphere. A sphere has some radius. Then I would say sphere colon radius, and then I'm giving it like 3 for the number because I'm calculating volume, and I do the same. So I say pi again because I'm having 2 classes, right? So I would say pi again times POW stand for to the power of what? Again, I'm receiving information from the other class, cylinder. So I would say cylinder. And then from cylinder, now you have to pay attention. From cylinder, you have a radius and you have a length. You have 2 variables. So you have to say colon, and then you say radius, comma. For example, I'm going to give it 2. This is like comma 2. And then you have to say, since you have length, again, times length. And you are done. You can just add semicolon. So I'm gonna, since this is a long line, I'm gonna push anything from here to the next line. Then you can see everything at once. Okay. So now I'm gonna hold on right in here. Since my pi is not defined, I'll go back to composite header file. I move to the beginning of the file. Pay attention right after my using namespace. Right in here, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna define what is pi. So I'm gonna say you can use double, but it has to be like I'm defining a constant double. I'm gonna use variable pi. I'm gonna assign it to 4 times A10 means arctangent. And then, of course, you can just give it 1.0, and then you are done to finish it up with semicolon, right? And now I'm going to minimize in here. So I added the constant variable double, which is a pi. If I go back, pi is now fixed. It's not underlined red anymore. You got it, Nusha? See, no, you don't need to. You don't need to because this is a constant. Yeah. You can even define it as a constant as causes a constant number. Yeah, but usually I practice the equation. There are multiple methods of this definition, but you don't need CMAT, no. So now I'm done with the virtual function. You can see underline green is not there anymore. So I'm gonna just define my IStream and OStream. So I'll go back to here. I'm gonna maximize again to make sure you can see what I'm doing. And then I'm gonna say, and as always, I keep a copy of my code. Maybe it's really small. I cannot even read it myself, but still I always keep it on the side. For example, it is reminding everyone inside which function I am, at least the highlight part of it. So that's why I keep it on the side. So now I'm gonna look at my IStream, right? So you have to say IStream, and then remember and operator. And then you have to pay attention about the direction. Otherwise, you are gonna, if it is I stream, then what is the direction? I stream is input. Direction is toward your left. And then right after that, open your parentheses. Again, say I stream. But the thing is, you have to give it some variable, right? The variables should be I stream is trying to help you to, let me show you right in here. I stream is trying to help you to input, right? So variable that you can assign, do not go wrong with it. This is variable. You can use anything. It's not mandatory to use in, but I usually use like iStream with in iStream and operator. You can give it another variable. And of course, composite. And for the composite, just say and operator, you have to give it one variable. For example, I'm going to create some object. Therefore, you can say object if you are going to create some object. You can give it again any other variable and then detail it inside the curly bracket. Because if you do not have using namespace in here, you must, if using namespace is not here, you must add a steady colon at the beginning of these lines. Otherwise, you are going to get error. This is mandatory. Then it's time to start input and output. So I'm going to say cout. First one, maybe just a little bit about the material which I'm going to use. So I would say material name. Give it a little bit of detail, what you want. And this material name, where is this one coming? This is supposed to come from your input, right? Then say input. And then this is going to come from the object that you create right in here. So therefore you have to say object obj dot material. And then you can simply close it with semicolon. You do the same for the rest. So you should say cout. Again, some comments in here. For example, this is a sphere. This is my sphere radius. And then this is supposed to come again, semicolon. This is input, but this input is coming from, it is important to address them correctly. This is object dot sphere colon radius, then semicolon. Pay attention. This is super important to follow the order. And you do the same for the cylinder radius and cylinder length. For cylinder, you have two variable. Again, semicolon, again, input or in here. Again, say object. This is important again to say this comes from cylinder. Is this, do not go wrong with the name of classes. And then again, you should say colon and radius and semicolon. You repeat this one for the cylinder length. Cylinder length, right? And then again, semicolon, input, object. This one is coming from, again, cylinder, colon, but this time length. And finish it up with semicolon, right? And the very last one, I'm going to cout my volume. And then again, semicolon. But volume is not input. Volume is calculated right in here. Therefore, since volume is calculated right in here, you simply say, that's the difference in here. You simply say object dot volume, right? Volume is not coming from anywhere else. And then say endl and semicolon. So Up to here, if you are done, pay attention. If you forget to return it, you are gonna get error. You must say return input. Return all of those input. So I'm gonna minimize to show you everything at the same time. You got it? Now, if I go back and validate, I see there is no more underline green in here. All I have left is defining the OS stream, and then we are ready to call everything inside the main. So I'm going to repeat the same process with a little bit of adjustment for OS stream and operator. Pay attention, this is and, therefore the direction is switching. Direction is toward the other end. And then OS stream and operator. And again, give it a variable for OS stream. I'm going to say out. And then again, composite and operator, and definitely you need a variable for here. I'm going to use the same object and then define it. So let me maximize to make sure you see what I'm doing. And then now, since it is OS stream, I can use out. First one, I'm going to just give some maybe good view. Therefore, I'm going to say these are going to be my attribute. Maybe a little less to make it smaller. And then finish it up with either end L or backslash n, either will work. And the next one, again, say out. So now what else do you want? You want this very similar. You want the sphere radius. Therefore, say sphere radius. And then what else? Again, you have to say get this one from object dot sphere dot sphere. So object dot sphere colon colon radius. And this is your output, right? And then finish it from here and just say simply handle. You repeat the one for the other variables. You've got cylinder radius, which is coming from cylinder radius is coming from object dot cylinder colon colon radius, and radius is with lower case and then handle. Done. I'll repeat for cylinder length. This is the last one in here. Then again, I have to say get this one from cylinder colon colon length and finish it up with and L to move to the next line. And what else? The very last one, as I did for the previous step, is going to be output your volume. Then again, say what is volume? Volume is, again, out of the quotation, say get it from object dot volume. Of course, this one has like parentheses, and finish it up with end. Now again, it is super important to be cautious about returning. If you don't return, you're gonna get error. So return out and then semicolon. And now everything is ready. I'm gonna go back to a header file in here, and I see I have no more underlined green. All of them are defined properly. Everyone got the same green check mark? Yes or no? You got it? Good. So it's time to go to inside your main function and finish up everything right in there. Everyone is following? Give me some nod. Yeah? Good. So let me go here. Inside here, all I'm gonna do is just trying to call the function. Very important to define your main function properly. First thing first, since I'm having multiple classes, I must include my classes. I don't even need hash include in here if I address all classes properly. So how do I do that? I would say hash include, what is my child class? What's my child class? Composite.h. And if I include this one, do I need to use using namespace? Do I need to use other classes? Do I need to use like iOS stream or anything? Yes or no? Why not? Because everything, every other information I may need, look at here, all of them are connected from line 1 to 6 of composite.header file right in here. Therefore, I do not really need to repeat them. Well, pay attention. If you do A1 cause error, but it's unnecessary, right? And it wastes your time. So all I have to do right in this step is just go ahead and define. So since you already got access to Composite, now I'm going to use Composite in order to define my variable, which is object. So I'm going to define what is object in here. Object, I want it to be, of course, I'm going to use double quotation, give it a name for the material. I'm going to say a steel. You can use any other material. And remember, I have to give it 3 variable as in double, which is 2 of them radius and 1 length. So I'm going to say 2, these are my numbers. You can use anything else, but if you want to validate your result with me to ensure you have it done properly, use the same numbers. Otherwise, use any other numbers. And then see out your object. And that's it. So I'm creating only one object. I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to just debug to see what would be the output. Everybody else do it with me. Compare your data, or I would say the output with me to validate the functionality of your code. It may take some time, but it will come up. Everyone is following? Of course, it must give you the radius for both sphere and cylinder and the length for the cylinder, and definitely it's gonna calculate the volume for you. It's doing it. It's a little slow. You can see it's drawing coming. So, and it has to just calculate the value for the volume and display it, as you can see right in here. So this is exactly the way I set it up. Radius for both sphere and cylinder, length for the cylinder, and definitely the final result for the volume. Everyone got the same? Yes or no? Yeah? Good job. So I'm going to give it a little bit more detail just for the purpose of practice. You may ask, what if I'm going to give it other information after compilation? Then you have to say composite. Composite is the name of the class, composite. And then again, for example, you are going to create object 2. For the object 2, instead of defining it in here, you can just give it option to cin after compilation. You can say cin object 2 and then cout object. Object, I said only obj, so you can use the exact same name, and then cout your obj. Cout object 2 and then definitely you can finish up your code and then we are done. You can say in here system pause. And then you can say return 0. So now I'm going to give it another try and I leave it on the side as the output. And then I have time to come around and see if anyone needs help. I help you to troubleshoot in case you have some error in your code. So it's coming again. Give it some time. It's here now. It has to give me option to enter information for a new object. I'm maximizing. So for example, the name, the other one I used as steel. So now I'm going to say, for example, copper. I didn't ask for, before I finish in that one, I didn't ask for the name of material, right? If I go back inside here, look at here, I only ask for the radius and length and everything. You definitely can add one output and ask for the material name, right? Under both, in here I have it, but since I do not have it in here, I can even add that one. These are all your options. You can say output even the material name. So this is gonna be fun. So I'm gonna say get, like for example, under the output, what is the material name? You can say again material name. This is gonna give you even what kind of material you're having like as an output. And then the material name will also be included. Look at here. I'm getting it from object material. So you have to say, get this one from object dot material, and then endl. That simply will help you to get the material name if you debug again. So look at here. Now I have the material name as well, right? So for example, previous one was steel and this information. Now I'm going to say copper for the material name. And I'm going to give it 3 numbers for the radiuses since I have 2 of them. Maybe 1.5, maybe 0.8, and maybe 3.1. And then I hit enter. Again, if I minimize, you can see I have a new volume for the second object. The material name, the radius for the sphere, radius for the cylinder, and of course length of cylinder. Just compare. I'm going to minimize. You can see both my objects. Object 1, it was hard-coded inside the Visual Studio, and then object 2 is something that I added information right after the compilation. Hopefully everybody enjoyed this one. So still, I'm here. In case you have any question, let me know. In case you have error in your code, let me know. I'll come around and I'll help you to fix it.